call this council meeting for September 22nd to order. Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Halter?
Here.
Ms. Hermes?
Here.
Mr. Lee?
Here.
Ms. Metz?
Here.
Ms. Hasmonaglu? Here. Ms. Walter?
Here.
And Mayor Moore.
Here. Okay, I have a prayer by Maria Walter.
Loving Heavenly Father, we come to you this hour asking for your blessing and help as we are gathered here together. We pray for guidance in the matters at hand and ask that you would clearly show us how to conduct our work with a spirit of joy and enthusiasm. Give us the desire to find ways to excel in our work. Help us to work together and encourage each other to excellence. We ask that we would challenge each other to reach higher and further to be the best we can be. We ask this in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have the minutes of the previous council meeting for work session of 8/11/20, council meeting 8/25/20, and council meeting and work session of 9/8/20. Do we have any corrections? Hearing none. Minutes are approved. Okay, this is a continuation of the public hearing from August 25th regarding proposed zoning amendments. If there's anyone wishing to comment on the proposed zoning text amendments, when recognized, please come forward to the lectern, give your name and address, and state your comments or questions. I was limiting to 3 minutes, but we've had some council members ask maybe to change that. So do we have a consensus to go to 4 minutes or
I would like to propose 5 minutes.
5 minutes?
Good.
All right, we'll do 5 minutes. Speakers may not yield any or all of their time to other speakers. And also, this will be just concerning this zoning amendment, not any other issues. Say if you've got any other issues with the council, then bring those up in the regular council meeting. And we'll start off with our attorney giving us a little update.
Oh. Thank you, Mayor. I hope this is working. Sure, I just wanted to give council a bit of a summary of what has happened since the last public hearing. As you recall, Mr. Burke, who's here tonight, and I suspect you'll probably hear from during the public hearing, we had an opportunity to meet along with your municipal manager. We had what I felt was a very productive meeting regarding the proposed text amendments. As a result of that meeting, the manager and I have talked, and we are comfortable making some additional modifications to the proposed amendments. And I believe a summary of those was provided at your seat. I'll take just a minute to walk through them a little bit, not in much detail, because again, tonight's the public hearing, but there is no ordinance before council for this tonight, so that any substantive council discussion will happen at that time when you actually have legislation in front of you. But what you will see are some of the changes are things like there was a reference to daycares. We clarified by adding the word child in front of that so that it's clear that this only applies to child daycares. There were some distance regulations related to some of the new conditional use. Some of the new conditional uses originally was proposed at 750 feet between these uses. We're suggesting that be reduced to 500 feet. There was a section regarding some hours of operation that would apply sort of uniformly to all conditional uses. And we're proposing to just strike that. That would leave hours of operation still subject to discussion as part of any conditional use permit application, but we agreed that it doesn't need to be in there as a blanket hours of operation regulation. Mr. Burke rightly pointed out, there was an old provision in the code that related to the provision of utility services, and if you didn't have the proper zoning certificate, that your utilities would be disconnected. We've had, that again, that was not anything new that was being proposed. That was a holdover from old code. And we, once that was brought to our attention, we realized that doesn't need to be there. So we'd suggest that that be deleted. There's a section about the application for this certificate of zoning compliance, where we're adding some language that says when appropriate, certain things have to happen. Again, there was some more time limits that said, you know, you had to do something in a certain amount of time or else your zoning certificate could expire, and we're removing that time limit. And then in 1155.03D, this was an entirely new section that we had proposed about administrative nuisance abatement. And what you have and what we're proposing is a bit of a rewrite of that to clarify what the due process would be during that, for that process. Rather than just have a hearing at the council level where council would make that determination, we've in essence rewritten it to work just like any other zoning official determination. So the zoning official would actually make that determination, and then the property owner would have the ability to appeal that determination to the Board of Zoning Appeals, just like any other zoning determination. And then, of course, that BZA decision can be appealed to the Common Pleas Court, just like any other determination at the BZA. So rather than have that stay at the council level, we just thought it made more sense to treat it just like any other determination of the zoning official and the appropriate appeal process that would follow with that. So I think that kind of covers the general changes that we've made and that we will be proposing when the legislation comes to council next month, I believe, is the intention there.
And if we have questions on any of these, is it better for later discussion since this is a public meeting?
I would suggest that you have your public hearing, hear from the public, and then if there are questions, we can try to address them, but it may be more appropriate, and I say it may be more appropriate at the time council considers it with its legislation, because as a result of tonight's public hearing, there may be other tweaks or modifications that we want to bring before council.
Okay.
That's all I have.
All right. Anybody want to comment? Mr. Burke?
Thank you, Mayor. And I do want to thank the mayor, the chief, the village administrator, and Jeff for the meeting that we had on September 2nd. I remain concerned that a lot of what this is about is clearly targeted at Village Gate. And many of the provisions that remain are provisions that will make it harder for that shopping center to be successful. I point out specifically, you are taking things that are currently permitted uses, and all of a sudden they are becoming conditional uses. And I think many of you are aware of the fact that there is one of those that's in the works right now, at the old bowling alley. That the intention is to convert that into an entertainment center or event center, which falls under the permitted uses in your zoning code now. And now, all of a sudden, if you change this, it's going to be a conditional use, which makes it more difficult for it to be approved. I appreciate some of the changes that Jeff described to you. I think there are more that are necessary to help this center be successful, which is clearly what you want and clearly what the center wants. The change of 750 feet to 500 feet, in all honesty, doesn't do a lot. Because the length of that center is such that if you maintain those distance restrictions for no particular public purpose, all they do is restrict what tenants may come in. I live in Mount Lookout. Come see Mount Lookout's retail center. It has an evil tattoo parlor. It has an event center in the middle of it, an old movie theater that's now an event center. It even has a smoke shop in it. It is one of the better business centers in any Cincinnati neighborhood. Nothing wrong with those uses. And there's a school right on the edge, Cardinal Pacelli, where my kids went, right on the edge of that business center. I don't understand why we try to restrict daycare centers, children's daycare centers, to make those more difficult to go in, when clearly those are something that are very badly needed today. Nor do I understand why we add language to it that has the village acting in the place of the state regulators and saying, we're going to enforce the state regulations. Well, they've got to have this, they've got to meet the state regulations to get their permits. Why you would add language that frankly is unclear about the recreation areas, I don't know. They need to meet whatever the state regs are for a daycare center. Why Greenhills wants to jump on top of that is unclear to me. We just saw these proposed changes this afternoon. I did not have time to put together a letter. I intend to do that. I would hope that the staff, the attorney, Yvonne, and members of council would keep an open mind on some of these things. I do think you made a major change to the good that provides some protection to the village in creating some due process provisions, but you've only done that in one area, not in the area that I saw you deal with last month when I was here, that I didn't think provided the required due process. And I think that's an area you need to give additional consideration to. I do worry, for example, about some of the language that's in the new due process provision, which suggests that if the matter is appealed to court, and I'm sure that it's intended to be under 2506, an appeal from an administrative decision, that it can only be reversed under your language if the decision was unreasonable or illegal. That is far more limited than what the state law provides. Because the state law says you have to be able to establish that your decision is supported by the preponderance of the reliable and probative evidence on the whole record. You've eliminated that from here. Is it your intention to make it more difficult to appeal decisions from your zoning board of appeals than in any other community in the state of Ohio under 2506? I doubt that that was your intention, but that is the way the draft reads now. I'll take some time over the next few days and get a letter to Jeff and to Yvonne with some additional comments in it. I really hope that you will avoid needlessly putting restrictions on the center. Steve is working very hard to make that a successful center. I recognize, and we've talked about it, there have been some conflicts, and we've talked about that. Those can be improved, and we made some progress on some of those over the last 30 days, and that was very helpful. I want to continue to try and do that, but it takes continued cooperation. We're going to try and do that on our side. I hope you will keep your minds open and not needlessly regulate businesses in the center that will make it only harder for that center to survive. And you all know that it has struggled in the past, particularly in today's climate every little business is struggling. Don't make it harder on him. We want this to succeed. We want it to succeed for you as well as for our client. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Can she
Can I
comment?
make a comment back on a couple of things that were said? If you don't mind. Can you hear me okay?
Yes?
Okay, great. Because I did want to comment on a few things. First of all, with the distances, if you do go Google Earth, I looked from a number of positions and felt that that was appropriate to accomplish, location of some stores for you as well as, protect our interests that we were concerned about. In terms of the daycares, we had 3 or 4 daycares move in there. Every single one of them were into there without approvals. None of them could meet the playground requirement.
There is only one daycare center in there now.
Right, the other ones moved out, probably for that very reason.
If they're not licensed by the state, they shouldn't be operating. I agree.
Yeah,
But
and
that's
I don't
the
know why they eventually moved, but all I could say is we didn't have the opportunity to work with them before they were in there to even resolve the issues until they were already in. So that is what we're trying to accomplish by doing it through conditional use, so we can be sure that people are walking through the steps and truly can fit in the space where they can fit. We have no outside playground areas for them. And a lot of that property, as you know, around there is village-owned, not privately owned. So that is the reason we were putting that in conditional use. Event centers are going in because we were having a flurry of requests or issues about event centers, and I had a concern about the parking, that if you look at parking requirements, could eventually suck all that up. And as far as the current applicant, the application we received, that individual was told we can move forward now with that as an entertainment establishment.
And I agree with
So we're
that.
waiting for their information. There's no intention to be holding that up.
I'm
Those are
glad
my
to hear
comments.
that. And my understanding is he is coming forward, and from what I've seen, he's already provided enough information that normally a municipality would say, this meets the zoning requirements. Now you've got to go and establish that you can meet the building code requirements, which is a different set of regulations.
Anyway, I don't agree, but that's okay.
It is different. That's one of the problems
Well,
here. You
wait.
keep mixing
You wanna
zoning
talk
and
about
building
it?
codes.
Let me address that. We are not asking for anything related to building code with respect to this particular application. To get a zoning certificate, I think, as you just pointed out, you have to demonstrate that you can meet the zoning code. Part of our zoning code has parking requirements. That's what, my understanding at least, is that's part of the most recent stuff that we've
Except
asked
when I
for.
was here the last time and we were talking about this, one of the things was, my God, they needed another door. That's a building code requirement.
And that has nothing to do with what
That was one of the things that was required.
but it's not now. And it's not based on what the correspondence that we've had. Although I think
It
we're
is
probably,
on his plans now that he has provided.
I think we are probably we can discuss the specific
Yeah.
application.
Yeah.
I think it's probably outside the scope of this particular public hearing.
Right.
I appreciate it. Thank
Okay,
you
thank
very
you.
much.
Anybody else want to comment on the zoning ordinance? Proposed zoning ordinance?
Could they end it? Hello, y'all. I have a question, and it's in regards to and it's in the amendment sheets, and I'm not sure if this is where you want me to talk about it, but it has to do with the definitions of the body art, pond, vape, and event center. My question is, I really just want to know why you do not want to have these. I don't understand, because I've been coming to these for 3 to 4 years, and you keep doing a moratorium, and you say you need more research, and yet you've had 3 years, and you still do a moratorium. So I really would like to know, really, Dave, what's the real reason why you don't want these businesses in the shopping center? Is this the right place to be asking this question?
I'm happy to comment. Yeah, I don't think it's a case that we don't want the businesses. I think we see them as ones that need a special look to be sure there's certain conditions that they fit in with what's in the area, that we can accommodate them.
Well, there's,
Some of
there's
these, I
lots
think
of
you
stores that can
misunderstand. Some of these are
accommodate them.
Would you like an answer?
You just told me. You
Okay.
want it to look like everybody else, and you want to make sure they have a place to accommodate them.
Did I say that?
And that shopping center was empty for so long, and for 3 years, you've been not wanting a pawn shop, or an art shop, or a vape shop, or a hookah lounge, and you never come up with an answer. And you've been moratorium in it for 3 years. I just am very curious.
Okay.
Is it because they're a 1099 and not a W-2 or something?
All right, do you have any other comments then to make on it?
Can't you answer this?
I'm not entering into a discussion back and forth on this particular
On
item.
this one? Okay, yeah, well, I think that's a really good question. And as far as permits on 555.01, is that not
That's-
part of this ordinance?
No,
Okay. All right, thank you.
So I'd like one clarification, Jeff. Has it been 3 years? Do you know?
I'm sorry?
Has the moratorium gone on for 3 years?
Oh,
No,
no.
this was just our third extension of 90-day periods.
No,
We're in our
I mean,
third-
there has not been a moratorium anywhere near 3 years.
No, this isn't, it has been a moratorium for 3 years.
No, it
Not
hasn't.
according to our records.
no.
Well,
9 months.
right.
And of course, COVID caused some delay in this whole thing. We have anybody else want to address this comments on the zoning?
Hello, I'm Kyle Bonner, 80 Farragut. Dave, I've worked with you on projects in the community. I love what you guys do as a service to the community. One of the things I have to bring up in the ordinance about tattoo parlors, one of your police officers, which has served this community greatly, I forget the guy's name, but I had a problem when I was working, and he came and helped us. The thing is, he has tattoos on his arm. And so what I have to ask is, if your own police officers have tattoos, what's the problem with having a tattoo parlor in the community? And what you have to ask is, wouldn't we want as much business as we can get that other communities that are good, like if you go to Yellow Springs, they have a smoke shop there. Do you know that people from here go to Yellow Springs for their shopping district and other fun activities, including hiking, other things to do in that community?
Are you equating Yellow Springs to Greenhills?
Not quite, I'm just stating that people go to different communities for things. What do people come here for? What businesses would you want here? What businesses would you find to be satisfactory to your needs for us to be able to enjoy? You know, some of us here, we do want a tattoo. My girlfriend wants to get her ears pierced. It'd be nice to do it here at a local place, in a local business, where the money generated comes here, instead of going somewhere else. There is a tattoo, it's a semicolon. It means a suicide survivor, which 2 of my family members took their lives. 1 almost did. They want to get the tattoo. So what I have to ask is, why is that so bad? Why is it so bad to, F is an arcade. In that section, letter F is an arcade. Why would you limit an arcade, for Christ's sakes? No offense, didn't mean that language, but what I'm saying is that it's a little bit odd that you would go through and pick these specific things to push out. And I'm guessing that these proposals and businesses have come up to you, or many of them, without the right permits or things of that nature. But if they got their permits from the state, like a tattoo parlor has to go through a lot of safety measures to be a tattoo parlor, especially by the state. And usually to be licensed, and there's a lot behind that. I don't know the specifics. I'm not a tattoo artist, but I know they're ran very stringently to health code because of what can happen if you have a dirty needle. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Why would you would limit business to such an extreme when you'd want that business coming here? Someone coming that they go, oh, well, I get a tattoo. Well, this is a nice neighborhood. It might bring more people here. Even one of your own police officers have tattoos on his arm. It's not a bad thing. And I didn't want to have a huge discussion or anything or a back and forth. I just wanted to give those 2 cents because I respect all of you. Because being a person serving the community is not the easiest thing, because everywhere you go, someone's got something to say, and they either like it or they hate you. But I just wanted to give you that 2 cents and just let you all ponder on it. So you guys have a good one.
Okay.
I would like to make a
Any
comment. Just one thing in context. Context is really, really important around what happens. And it did come as a bundle of those things. The moratorium obviously is to examine it. My daughter has a tattoo. I don't have an issue with it. So that came to us as a group. It doesn't mean it'll make it through entirely that way, but you know, a moratorium is to buy time to think. And so I didn't have a problem at all with it being included. Doesn't mean it won't be a point of discussion. And the whole goal is not to limit the shopping center or the fun or the, you know, what we offer. We have a number of times received no notification when a business moves in at all. And it's our responsibility to make sure that codes and things are followed. If the codes are wrong, like you guys are doing, we need to change them. So I think the context of that's important. It's not so much that we sat in here and put a whole bunch of businesses up and said, those, we don't want those. It came as a bundle. We were okay with it for a moratorium. So thank you.
Okay, anyone else?
Patty and Von Chalmers Lane. I didn't come here tonight to talk about this, but I just picked up some things. I'm not really up to date on your, whatever the proposal is, but just in listening, I have a couple things to throw out here. Did I hear that there's a problem with having a bake shop? Did I hear that?
Vape shop.
B-A-K-E?
No.
Donuts?
No.
Oh, okay. Because I'm like, oh my goodness.
You like baked goods too.
Let's hear it for donuts. Okay. Just had to get that clear. The only observation, I don't shop at the shopping center much at all. Part of it is because, even though I've lived here for God knows how long, the cleanliness, I've gone over there and actually worked for hours on end trying to clean up things and pull up weeds and bushes and so forth. But the most recent time I was over there, outside the Dollar Tree store, there were garbage cans. The garbage cans that were there were just filthy, dirty, overflowing and whatever. And I don't know whose obligation that is, but that would be something that I'm hoping you're addressing.
Okay. Yeah, and this public hearing is just, you can make these comments in the regular council meeting. This is just strictly on that zoning ordinance.
Well, it has to do with the operation of.
Well, that may be, but it's not
Okay.
addressing the zoning
So
ordinance.
then, the other thing that I would suggest is, the village has a system, I don't know how well it is used, for rental inspections prior to occupancy.
Pat, that's
Okay.
not on
I
it.
used to
What-
manage shopping centers for pool management.
Okay.
And I know in the past, as a management agency, we did inspections.
Okay.
So I don't know if there's a way, if you're having issues with something not being right, if you could have a formal communication.
Yeah.
You're saying that people try to move in before you've even seen anything.
Okay.
Establish some kind of communication.
Bring that up in your talk.
No, it has to do with.
No,
the
it doesn't
shopping
have to do with the zoning ordinance that we're covering.
I'd like to make one thing clear. These zoning amendments are not specifically about the shopping center. They're for B1, B3, the Village Center District.
Okay.
I understand, I think we all understand, that the shopping center is by far the biggest component of those districts. But I think the mayor's point, Ms. Anduin, is that this zoning code amendments, this public hearing is for these zoning code amendments. They are not specific to the shopping center.
Right, but when you talk about due process, I think it seems to me that there's a communication gap, and that's what I was hearing, and I think you need to work on that.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? All right, hearing none,
Good afternoon, my name is Tracy Hawkins. I'm an attorney at Coors and Bassett in Cincinnati, and I represent BJ's Discount. My client is on his way here. He was not able to be here due to a death in the family, but he will be here later on tonight. I just wanted to say that, like Tim, I just received the information that was posted yesterday, so I have not had a time to do a formal response to the proposals. I would agree that it does seem like a lot of this is targeted at Village Gate. I know that we've just said that that's not the case, but it sure feels like it when you're advocating for somebody at Village Gate. I am very concerned about the way the permitted uses that currently exist are being transferred into conditional uses. I understand there is some rationale. I do agree that there are some changes that need to be made, and to the extent that I can participate in that, I would really appreciate that opportunity. Again, I want to echo Mr. Burke's comments about the due process and the procedural methods that you are building into the proposed amendment. I don't think it's going to functionally work, and I would welcome the opportunity to go over that with you. Specifically with respect to my client's situation, he owns, or he had the BJ's Market, which included cell phone repairs, computers, and he had general merchandise. And we're going to go over the specifics about that later on. My concern is, in the proposed amendment, I'm seeing changes from the vape lounge, which by definition means there has to be at least 2 or 3 seats for people to enjoy their materials, their products in the store. And that was never an issue. And now it's being called a smoke shop. So that is materially different within the industry than what you had started with. So I question the appropriateness of that. I understand to a great extent your concerns with respect to a vape lounge. I get that. But a smoke shop that's selling many services as well as tobacco and vape products, much like the Ameristop, I don't understand your refusal for that. And again, we'll go over the specifics about his application.
May I ask?
Sure.
Have you seen the merchandise in?
Yes. Yeah.
Are those
I've also
products,
seen
are
your-
those
I've al-
products intended for tobacco?
Pardon me?
Are those products intended for
That's
tobacco?
the later meeting, right? So I'd be happy to address that at the later meeting. I understand we're not supposed to address that here.
Okay, let's go
My
on.
concern again being the language that you've changed it from smoke, or from a vape lounge to a smoke shop, which smoke didn't include before, and a vape shop, which again is different than a vape lounge. I understand your concerns that people are moving in and they're doing so without following the process beforehand. That is not, the resolution for that, the appropriate resolution for that is not to target these specific businesses, but to target the bad people, the bad actors. You guys have the power and authority. Exercise that authority as those issues arise, not preemptively knocking down all of the good business owners out there. I don't understand the comment that these particular items or these particular uses came as a bundle and we were okay with it. I think you said that. I would like to understand what you mean by that.
I'll follow up after you're done.
Okay. Again, I'm going to revert back to the smoke shop versus vape lounge kind of situation. As Mr. Burke and as the gentleman that was talking about the tattoos, vape shops and smoke shops are highly regulated by the state. They are subject to imposition of special taxation. They have to have distributor, dealer and registration and retailer paperwork filed with the state. So they are also a business that is highly regulated. And, to talk about the donuts, some people like their donuts, but, other people have different vices. And vapes and tattoos are a huge commonplace situation in 2020. And I would ask the board to please consider your audience, your targeted audience, and, the future of the community. Thank you. Do you have any questions for me?
Not at this point, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else?
No, wait a minute.
Oh.
You're going to answer that, right?
No, a couple things. One is, as far as we rely on our village manager and those in that position of authority to manage the village. So when a recommendation comes to us, and it was brought as a recommendation, we look at it and say, this makes sense. There was no permanent decision made at that point, so we just looked at it and it seemed to make sense based on her experience, which we've had very good success with. So that's what I meant by bundle.
As relates to the
As it
moratorium.
relates to the moratorium. And then as far as this whole thing, changing, nothing's been permanent, so it makes it sound like we've had something in place, and each time we have a meeting like this, we're
I'm sorry,
changing.
say that again.
Each time we have a meeting, public meeting like this, of course, we hope it would change, because we're looking for input. We have discussion amongst ourselves. So to compare this to previous meetings and what has changed, yes, things will change. Sometimes, I'm sure some of you will think it's for the better. Sometimes we'll think it's for the better. Well, it's going to be an evolving process. That's what's very healthy, I think, about it. I think you guys getting together makes a lot of sense to me. Like I said, we want this place to be successful. And it's easy to paint in this day and age a bias towards our decisions. I know that your client in particular put cell phones only on his
And we can
application.
talk about that specifically because I
I'm
have
just- I'm
objections
trying to
that I
address-
filed with the council today.
Yeah, and it's obviously more than cell phones. But, so, we're just trying to look for the best solution in light of our residents, in light of us making the best choice we can. That's our sole purpose.
One last question as a follow-up. I appreciate your explanation there. How many complaints have you had about smoke shops, vape shops, tattoo parlors?
And I can't
Any idea?
answer that, and I don't know if we would at this time.
I'm sorry?
We don't have a response right now because that's up to her to answer, and I don't know if she can just do that off the top of her head.
Right, I'd have to look back.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? All right.
Hi, I'm Ken Irwin. I live at 146 June Dale.
Dale?
There's a lot of them. It's all good.
We moved to Greenhills in November, and since we've been here, we have heard over and over again that this village needs to get more younger people to move here. I find it a little alarming that I count as a younger people. But given that, putting in place obstructions to moving in businesses like vape shops and tattoo shops and body art are the kinds of places somebody said earlier that might attract a younger kind of crowd to look at Greenhills differently. Greenhills is not going to be Yellow Springs, but if you were looking for a model for how to make a small village a thriving business area, I'll tell you what I want here. I want a brewery, and I want a cool import shop, and I don't need a vape shop, I don't need a tattoo shop, but somebody does. And I think that if you're trying to change the demographic makeup here in the long run, those are kinds of places that might be relevant. I also think that that shopping district is not a thriving place, and having somebody there, somebody paying rent, somebody occupying the space and getting it used is better than not. It's a pretty disappointing place to look at, and I'm sure you all feel the same way. I'm concerned about putting more restrictions in place, and maybe without good reasons. So I know I'm coming late to this discussion. I know you've all been talking about this for a year, but it sounds like lots of us are coming late to the awareness that this is going on too. So I hope you'll think about not putting those restrictions in place. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gosh, I had a question. I lost it now too.
All right. All right. We'll conclude this public hearing and go into a council meeting. And we have and I don't know if anybody wants to leave, they can leave. We have a public presentation now by, it was going to be Mr. Cupoletti, but since we have the superintendent here, he'll do the presentation, right? So if you want to address council and give us an update maybe on,
Yeah, okay, all right.
okay?
Thank you, appreciate it, thank you, Mayor. Board. We wanted to let you know that since COVID, our school has been without children in it since March 15th. And when we look at the 32 districts that are in our locale, we realize that there are only 4 districts that are still virtual. We are one of them. We started out very, very small and very, very specific, where we had all of the staff members report. And since that time, we've not had an outbreak. And we wanted to let people know that based on the safe distancing, the masks, the PPE that we've been wearing, the hand washing, and all of the other amenities that we put in place based on the CDC recommendations, that we're ready to transition to the next phase. We are very, very excited. We are actually working right now to finalize our plans, but we are planning on bringing our students with disabilities. We have students that are MH, students that are need occupational therapy, physical therapy. They cannot get it remotely, and we understand that. Their teachers have been very, very patient and very, very diligent. And so we're phasing in our preschoolers that have never met their teachers, our kindergarten students who've never set foot in any buildings, our students with disabilities, as well as our English language learners. Okay, they are all struggling. We understand that we have put a virtual plan in place, but it does not accommodate all of our student needs. After this week, after next week, excuse me, we're going to go into our blended model for the 1st of October. We'll have students on blue and students on green, but parents still have the opportunity to choose a virtual experience. And right now our numbers look very, very awesome, simply because 50% of our parents are saying, not right now, superintendent, we're not ready to come back. Which means that on our blue day, we would actually have a small group of students in our school. On our green day, we would have a small group of students. That gives the teachers an opportunity to work with students who may have had some difficulty during the pandemic, who didn't really capture the essence of what we were trying to do online. Some students, because we've issued Chromebooks to every student in our district, some students are struggling because they're using their data the wrong way. That means they're using up their data, and when we try to get them to log in, they can't. So we need some face-to-face operations. And you guys know teachers are actually a different breed because they like the face-to-face operations of how to get to learn and know kids in a very, very different way. So we are pushing the envelope. Parents have suggested, when can our kids return to school? Because everybody else in our locale is returning to school. At the end of the day, I have to make sure my children can compete. They have to be able to compete locally as well as globally. And so we want to let you know what the transition looks like. We're going to use the same transitional model up until November 30th. And then we're going to make the next phase where all students will return. And we needed to give students a really big burst just before winter break because we don't know how COVID is going to react, because it looks like the flu, but of course it's not. So I am on the phone every Friday with the Center for Disease Control as well as the epidemiologists, and they're giving us numbers and giving us information. And the students that we serve in the category, the age of 3 to 18, those groups are not having an increase in COVID. Those are the students that we serve in our district. So we were very, very careful, very, very strategic of when to bring our kids back. And we're saying that this is the transition time, and we wanted the village to know what we were doing, as well as the other communities that we serve, Forest Park and, of course, Springfield Township. So that's the information.
I had a
Yes,
question. So are you working with the same base and amount of teachers that are trying to do both the online and in-face, or how's that working for you?
Well, because they'll have no more than maybe 8 kids in their class, they're working with those students. But remember, we're a project-based learning institution. So if you could imagine Jeff having a conversation with David Moore, they would actually be online working collaboratively together, where one is remote and one is actually in school. So it works out very, very well. We've studied it, we put it into play. And I want to let you guys know that in March, when COVID hit and we had to shut down, only 40% of our students were receiving the quality education that we wanted them to have. Since we brought the adults back, our attendance rate is 95% in some classes, in some cases, and we know that we can increase that number because some of our students have never been reached.
Yeah, my point was the hats off to the teachers, because that is a lot, and they're really, I'm impressed, you know.
And they have been very, very committed to the operation. They are working collaboratively with the administrators, also with our board. We approved 3 plans on the July 27th meeting: a virtual plan, a blended plan, and a face-to-face. We approved all 3 of those at the same meeting so that we can work and be very, very nimble to transition to those plans if we needed to when we saw that COVID was on the decrease. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to say thank you. My daughter is in Miss Mann's first grade class at Primary North, and she said that they had the highest attendance rate.
Absolutely.
So I know it's been a struggle, but Miss Mann is doing a fantastic job with first graders, which is a different breed. I've sat in on watching a couple of their days, and she has patience, and I'm very impressed.
Yes, thank you very much. So any other questions?
I just commend you on taking on the question about the students with special needs, because that's critical.
Because we understand that eventually their parents will transition. Those kids have to learn how to take care of themselves and be in this society and understand it. And from our position right now, we're not giving them all of the resources that they're entitled to. We're going to push forward, do what's right for our children and do what's right for our community, because we understand if we don't do it, we're creating this educational void in every kid's life. So the face-to-face is operational. Trust us, we will be very, very safe. We will be very, very steady. We will be very, very strategic. And if we see an increase in COVID, we understand how to be very, very transitional. We've hired a company that has a pandemic record. This company is worldwide. They deal with viruses all over the world. They were very expensive, but they were worth it. And they can tell us that in the event that you have an outbreak in your school, you will not have to shut down your entire operation. And they are very, very well approved by the CDC and all of the doctors in our area. And so we're excited that we were able to find them. We were one of the few districts that's using that service. So we want to let you know it's not just the superintendent making a plea to talk about the opening of school. It's about the strategic plan that we're using in order to make it safe. And we wanted to let the chief and everybody else know that when you start seeing kids moving about, we didn't want it to be a surprise. We want to let you know that school is in session. Okay? All right. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Anthony.
Let me ask him a question. I'm just wondering, could you use volunteers to Skype with children to do remedial assistance?
We definitely use volunteers now, but because I am the worst gatekeeper in the world, I watch everybody and everything around my children. So you would have to get a BCI check and an FBI check and every other check that we expect you to get to be able to work with our children. Because it's not because we don't trust you, it's just that this is the most important commodity that we have in our communities. And so I have to make sure that it's safe. So if people want to volunteer, there are some very stringent hoops that you have to come through. You cannot just walk in a building and say, I want to give services. Because we have to protect our investment. Okay? Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
It should be something, we are always looking for volunteers, but if we put it in the journal, that would be fine. But, we get a lot of people coming around wanting to help children. And I have to tell you guys, some of them get turned away because you don't have the right background to be in front of my children. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you.
All right, moving on. Okay, this is the time for citizens to comment on matters before council. When recognized, please come forward to the lectern, give your name and address, and state your comments or questions. This is not intended to be a dialogue with council or village staff. If you have questions, the questions will be recorded and referred to the manager's office for response. This will allow time for thorough and thoughtful consideration to be given to each question. Council meetings are recorded for ease of transcriptions. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. Speakers may not yield any or all of their time to other speakers.
Good evening, Monique Mason, Halter, 154 Junefield. I am requesting again that council members take action against the installation of radiation-emitting infrastructure, especially near our homes. Health and safety risks have prompted other American municipal governments to take action. This includes elected officials in other Greenbelt community, Greendale, Wisconsin, who passed a resolution against 5G deployment in 2018. According to lawyer Andrew J. Campanelli, local governments like ours are not powerless to regulate and deny small cells installation. Here's what he said about this. Quote, "Every day my phone rings and someone is upset because with the 5G rollout, they are looking to put facilities in much closer proximity to people's homes. Typically, it's involving a small cell or DOS node as close as 20 feet to someone's child's bedroom window. This is going on all over the country. In fact, as we speak, the major players in the wireless industry are looking to install hundreds of thousands of these things. Basically, I come in and I do what I need to do to defeat the applications and prevent the single installations. Now people are calling on me to enlighten their local governments and to dispel misinformation, because misinformation is one of the wireless industry's greatest tools at this juncture. In connection with the 5G rollout, they are more than ever before trying to mislead local governments to believe that under the Federal Telecom Act of 1996, local governments no longer have the power to regulate the placement of wireless facilities. That's completely false. So individuals and groups and even municipalities are hiring me to do municipal ordinance review. So I look at their ordinances and then I recommend changes which, number one, give local governments in maximum power to control the placement of wireless facilities, and make sure when they render zoning decisions to deny an application to install a wireless facility, they do so in a manner which avoids any potential violations to the Telecom Act. Number one, the decision stands up, and number two, they can't get sued. Finally, I also give them assistance in enacting regulations to protect their citizenry from, quite frankly, exposure to illegally excessive levels of RF radiation. Unfortunately, what the vast majority of the country doesn't know is that with respect to 5G, virtually all the wireless facilities are essentially unregulated. What I mean by that is that when they are built, the FCC has no idea where they are and where it has no idea of what level of RF radiation they are emitting. That's because any facility under 199 feet doesn't have to be registered with the FCC. With regard to RF radiation, they are exposing people to the FCC. Unless it receives a complaint, they never test the facilities and never require the owners to test them. Please, I've been asking this for 4 years. Please do something. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else?
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Helen Booker, and I live at 5 Hayden Drive. My concerns have to do with safety and recreation in the community. I'm a very active senior citizen, and I have 2 rambunctious grandsons, 10 and 7, and they live in the community as well. And I notice, and I know the police and everybody's doing what they do, but y'all can't be everywhere and there's not a whole bunch of you. But people drive up and down the streets of Greenhills like they going to a drag race. My children, my grandchildren, which I call them my kids, because my kids, they're my kids. They're out there on their bicycles. I see a bunch of other children out there on their bicycles. These corners, coming off of like Farragut and what have you, those corners, those kids can't see those cars. And I don't know, I guess the speed limit is supposed to be 25, but in my mind, 25 is too fast. And I would ask that the community take a look at the feasibility of, number one, limiting the speed limit, lowering it. Number two, placing signs that say slow children at play or something to that effect. There are a lot of children in Greenhills. And I would hate to see one of these kids get hit because somebody's driving like a bat out of hell. And if it would be one of mine, I don't know what I would do. But the deal is, I don't want it to be anybody's child. And at that corner up at Farragut and Hadley, where those cars park close to the, in my mind, it's close to the curb. And when you come out Hadley to turn onto Farragut, it's very difficult to see if there's any cars coming that way. I don't know what can be done about it, but again, I would ask that somebody do a feasibility study, because once the school is built, I know there's supposed to be a roundabout, and in my mind, I can't see the roundabout, because I'm not that kind of a person, but It concerns me because there'll be a bunch of kids, some of them will be on buses, some of them will be on foot. Mine's gonna be on foot. And I don't want my child to get hit because those cars can't see the kids, and I don't know how the roundabout's gonna work, nor do I know what the sidewalk's gonna look like. But that's my issue. And the other issue I have about recreation is, again, there's a bunch of children here, and again, I'm a very active senior citizen, and I know that the golf course is supposed to be something. I don't know what it's supposed to be. I mean, I don't know if there's even a recreation committee here, but I'd like to be a part of a recreation committee because, again, I'm a very active senior citizen, and I have grandchildren, and there's a bunch of other kids around me. So I'd like to see them do something in their own community without us having to go and spend our money somewhere else. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name's Patricia Bender, and I have a question on the permit 555.01 permits. I was wondering, what is the pre-planning policy for use of municipal facilities? Is that a form you have to fill in to be approved to rent the space? That's a question. I guess I'll get another answer another time. And then you also have down here exceptions of permit village events. I was wondering, is Concert on the Commons a village event?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, it is. Okay, so that's what I wanted to know because it's got an exemption and doesn't need a permit. And the other thing is the gazebo was donated, was it not, by a family to the village? So my question is, why do people have to rent and get a permit to use the gazebo? It's just a question of thought. Thank you very much.
All righty.
Good evening again. It's been a long time since I've been before you, and I'd probably be a long time again, although I'm already planning for next month because I'll bring everybody on Chalmers Lane if necessary. One thing that I've noticed here this evening, and I have to tell you, compared to all the other public meetings I've been to, this group setting up a rule that you won't respond to people is an insult to the public. It's an insult to the taxpayers, it's an insult to the residents. And I wish that you would try to be more accountable and transparent. It's disgusting. Nevertheless, Notorious RBG is gone, but Notorious Patty and Bon is back. So if you want to use a slur, you can use that. I'd be honored. I want to know why the village of Greenhills can't seem to bring itself to provide information to landlords to inform the new residents where there's a lot of rentals. I'm not sure what the percentage is, but on Chalmers Lane and Court, it's very high. They don't seem to be aware of when to put their trash cans out. They're supposed to be in lidded containers. They're supposed to not put bags out or empty boxes or whatever, but no one seems to follow that. And I can't really hold them responsible. I hold you guys responsible because you're not conveying the information to the landlords and making sure that they are informing those new residents to be responsible. You've got Mr. Sizeward that bought up 10 units over there, and his places are pigsties. And if you can't enforce rules over there, then you're really a bunch of losers because there's no excuse for that, absolutely no excuse. I'd be glad to serve. I've managed property for the village and for companies, and I'd be happy to work with you to improve your policies. Right now, I'd like to ask, when you inform the village of your reports, I'd like for each of you people who are members of your committees to actually state for the public how you view your responsibility to serve on that committee and how people are supposed to communicate with you when things are not working. Because this business of coming up here and you all sitting there like a blank wall and not responding doesn't work. We've got a guy who's like 400 pounds that lives in 10 Chalmers. I asked for Officer Patton to go over and do a welfare check this week. The people that live next door have called the health department. There is no excuse for how this man lives and what goes on there. We need to follow up on that. There's a drug dealer on Chalmers Court.
Okay, your time's up.
Okay. Mr. Moore, you have made every effort to be irresponsible and every effort to be disrespectful.
Thanks for your time,
And
Ms.
your
Handler.
time is up. I want to know
Your time
when
is-
each of you give your report, when it is that we are allowed to come and sit in your committee meetings.
you
and
take a
make sure
seat?
you understand.
Ms.
Because
Hanlon, take a
otherwise,
seat.
you're worthless.
All right. Anybody else?
My client is supposed to be on his way. Again, it's Tracy Hawkins, and I want to talk about the situation with BJ's discount, or BJ discount. Specifically, I know that there has been a revocation of his zoning approval on the grounds that he allegedly provided false information. I would like to talk about the first application where he included the general merchandise in his application. I would like to understand why that was denied. Because if I look at your code, and as it pertains to the Village Center, 113702C1 corresponds to principally permitted retail uses allowed in the B1 and B3 business districts, including, subparagraph 1, retail sales and service shops. If we look at the definition for the retail sales and service shops, retail business, as retail business shall mean any business selling goods, wares, merchandise directly to the ultimate consumer for direct consumption and not for resale. The application that he submitted, I believe was July 31st, specifically included general merchandise. I don't see anything in here that says that he cannot have a smoke shop. Again, you have a moratorium on a vape lounge. But the material that was in existence at the time of his application, the first one, which you denied, that he amended based on your conversation with him, that was approved, he invested about $50,000 or $60,000, opened that shop, and was immediately shut down. He had police enter the premises. I've seen the videos. Within 24 hours, he was told to close his shop. He is losing thousands of dollars every day because he is not able to carry on the business that by definition in your code is permitted. I understand there is a moratorium on vape lounges, and perhaps, and I don't mean any disrespect by it, but as another gentleman said, actually a couple of them have said, it's the wave of where we are in 2020 compared to 1980. So I don't consider myself a young person either. I think that's 2 generations below me. But that being said, I understand the impact of these businesses on communities. And I would encourage you to understand the difference between a vape shop and a smoke shop when you initially put the materials together and put that moratorium together. Because the moratorium that you have in effect, and that was in effect at the time of my client's application, was not prohibiting smoke shops or vape shops. It prohibited vape lounges, which requires not just bar stools, but actual loungewear. So I would respectfully request that you reconsider. I have copies of the objections and appeal for each of you that I had faxed to the board. Everybody want a copy or you just want one?
Well, I at least would like one.
I haven't seen it at all.
Actually, how many do you want?
Whatever you want to give us, I'll take one and pass them down.
I did fax this, and there's a copy of the fax for you on that.
Okay, thank you.
The top one and the last one, Counselor.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, moving on. Reports of village officials, Municipal Manager Yvonne Kovac.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have a number of things tonight that I want to review. First of all, I'd like to talk about the swim safe contract that's on your agenda for tonight. I gave each of you a list of the contract amounts since we have had, you see that in the packet of information I gave you. Since we started with them, our first contract was in 2012 at $109,500. There's a packet of 3 items, paper clipped together. It'll be in there. The paper clipped item right there. Yeah, did you find yours, everybody? Okay. The second item in there. Anyway, just wanted to get you a feel for give you a feel for where we are over, from 2012 through 2023. Really, we will, I don't even think we will get a $25,000 increase in that contract. They're proposing a 3-year contract starting in 2021, keeping the same rate as this year, with a 4% increase in 2022 that would stay the same for 2023. So I can't say enough about their services, and the way they performed this season with COVID has just been absolutely amazing, and they're to be commended for that. Anyway, if you had any questions on that, but I want you to see the comparison, and I would certainly recommend you approve their continuing contract. I also have given you a little handout I did about, which would be the very next page after that. You know, it's election season. We're getting a lot of, starting to get a lot of signs in yards. That's fine. We just want to have a handout that we can send or distribute to people to remind them. Mostly don't put it in a planting strip. It has to be on private property. That's probably the biggest thing for us. So. Anyway, I want you to be aware of that. We would be using that to mail out to people who have some violations. Also had some conversations today with Chief Spaeth, and he asked me to mention a few things. The fire department, the fire department is currently doing their hydrant checks and repairs right now. We have had issues with people with plantings in the right-of-way by those hydrants. If anybody has any of those, they're going to have to go because they will be digging or probably destroying those plantings. So please have those removed. I also asked him about the turkey raffle. There will be a turkey raffle, but it's going to be quite different this year. They're going to do, it won't be in person. They will do the door-to-door, hang the tickets on the doors, do drawings and prizes. Of the prizes this year, it'll be through a virtual event on November 21st at 7 p.m. There'll be more details to follow on how they're going to do that process. They also have through their website, GFD fundraiser at gfd.org. You can literally go on there and schedule, like, for somebody to come and pick up. You could leave your tickets and your order on the outside, and somebody can come and pick up. So it's all hands-free. So they'll get some more information out on that, and when that starts, we'll get it up on our sign as well. So I want you to be aware of that. Also, we've already started getting a lot of phone calls about Halloween, which you may want to choose to talk about it a little bit here, but basically be aware that I think I sent them out to you. There are general guidelines by the state of Ohio that if anyone chooses to participate in Halloween, they should definitely review those guidelines and follow them. So that's what I have right now. Thank you.
Questions of the manager?
I have a couple of questions. Number one, since you mentioned Halloween, are we having a Halloween participation here? I know that there are the guidelines of that, but is the village promoting that we will have a Halloween?
Well, I'm going to recommend that somebody pass a motion in
It'll be
today's
during-
meeting to recognize Halloween.
Maybe talk about it with the Recreation Committee.
Okay. And second, I've been looking around, there's a lot of fire hydrants that have been bumped into by cars. I think that would be a mild way to put it. But I also have seen some that have been painted of different colors and different things. And I don't know what the ordinance stands for that, and whether or not any of those that have personal painting on it, if it has a reflector in order for the fire department that's looking for the fire and the hydrant, if they have a reflector or not.
I don't think they have reflectors on the hydrants.
I'm particularly thinking of one, I think it's in Farragut.
It's been
Right,
repainted,
it's been
I think.
repainted.
Okay.
Fire department did talk to them, yes, and
Okay.
asked them to paint it back to the
Yeah.
yellow.
Okay, but there were some, quite 2 or 3 that have been yanked out, I guess, by
They're-
cars.
they're on-
Right, those are the ones being repaired.
Okay,
Have been or will be repaired.
so they will be replaced somehow.
Well, repaired
Yeah.
or replaced
Yeah.
as needed, yes. So
Okay.
they're currently checking all of them.
Okay.
Okay, all right, moving on, Law Director, Mr. Forbes.
Thank you, Mayor. I think my written report was distributed to council. You'll see that there are no pending legal matters from that account, from that report. I did, and I won't spend much time on it, I did mention that there has been discussion of the introduction of a bill that would end the governor's stated declaration of emergency. I mentioned that only in the sense that from a municipal interest, and it doesn't matter to us as much anymore because we've already gone back to live in-person meetings, but that element of the law that allowed local governments to use things like Zoom or other video conferencing to conduct their public meetings, it does say in that specifically that you can only do that until December 1st or when the governor's declaration of emergency is over. So that's the only reason I mention it, is that in the event that this bill were to proceed and somehow manage to pass and overcome a veto, that would put an end to the ability to do any more video conferencing, teleconferencing. You'd have to, again, it doesn't matter to you as much because we've already gone back to live meetings, but that is a possible impact for municipal governments. Other than that, nothing to report.
All right. Clerk of Council, Tanya Kohler.
Nothing to report, but I would like to remind those that have spoken to please write your name and address on the sheet so I can have it for notes.
Okay. All right, Chief of Police Neil Furterman.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll start with the crime stats. For the month of August, we responded to 213 incidents, including an aggravated menacing, 5 thefts, 8 domestic disputes, and 26 mutual aid runs. We made 10 criminal arrests, which included 2 for domestic violence, 1 for OVI, 1 for menacing, 2 for drug offenses, and 4 for other infractions. Our officers issued 18 traffic citations, 29 warnings, assisted 4 motorists, and investigated 3 traffic crashes. We issued a media release today because we're very concerned for the safety of an endangered runaway, a missing juvenile by the name of Tanya Williams. She lives in the J section. She's been missing since the 19th. She's 14 years old. We have details and photos of her on our website, so anyone that might be listening to this broadcast and knows anything about her whereabouts, we'd sure like to know. When she was last seen, she was wearing black and white Vans shoes and a black jacket with pink stripes, and her hair is in twists. So we're very concerned about her whereabouts and would like to get her safely home. Also, in terms of events, we did have a theft at a local business that was investigated and cleared by arrest. On August 25th, a middle-aged male went into the Village Keg on Enfield Street, stole a half a gallon of whiskey valued at about $49 and concealed it in his clothing and left the store without paying for the item. Officers worked the case with the description of the perpetrator and his vehicle until they were able to develop a suspect in the incident. Corporal Mike Mathis, Officers Eric Tricase and Philip Means worked to solve the crime, resulting in the arrest of a 52-year-old Forest Park resident who was charged with theft. The officers did an excellent job using investigative leads to track down the suspect. If you do look on the Waycross website, you'll find a new Talking with Greenhills around the police department. Officer Cody Ritchie joined me. He showed off the new exterior vest that we recently received an $11,000 grant to pay for. We talked about that, the Pay It Forward Award that we received, which was a national award, and the 2020 census. And if you haven't participated in that, there is still time left until the end of this month. You can see that program either through our website or through the Waycross website. We have done another one. One of the things that I truly enjoy doing is getting over to Primary North and reading to our second graders. I was able to do that virtually, and Waycross will be publishing that program for our second grade teachers to use. 3 incidents of community policing. We do a lot of that. We have done a whole lot more of that than than normal recently because of the COVID-19 case. Story number one was on August 28th while patrolling a parking lot. Cody Ritchie noted, while on patrol, I observed two people practicing for the driver's license test. They were using clothes to mark the spots. I grabbed some cones and asked them if they would like to use them to practice. I also offered the driver some tips that helped me when I took my driving test. Any of you know Officer Ritchie, he's probably not taken that test too many years ago. On September 1st at 4:28 p.m., Corporal Michael Mathis wrote, while on patrol, I found a 12-year-old laying on the sidewalk after wrecking his bicycle. He seemed to be okay, other than minor facial injuries. He seemed shook up, so I walked him home to his house on Ingram, and his parents took over. And then finally, on September 16th at 10:29 p.m., Officer Rob Lenhoff reported that he assisted a motorist by changing a tire at the firehouse. His supervisor, who was the aforementioned Mike Mathis, wrote the following to him. You went over and above in assisting these two young men tonight whose car had tire problems. You got them to the PD and used tools at your availability there to change the tire for them. This simple act shows service, compassion, and commitment to your fellow man. Thank you for making us all look good. And that concludes my report, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Any comments, questions of the chief?
I believe you also helped to find little Brutus, didn't you? There was a missing dog.
We did. We deployed two officers immediately.
All right. I have no court receipts to report for tonight. And the lady who brought up the question about speed has left, but if she's watching at home or tunes in or checks in with us later, the speed limits in the community are basically set by the state of Ohio. So the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit on residential streets cannot be reduced to 15 miles an hour based on state law. And there are various guidelines, but most residential streets all have to be 25 miles an hour.
But to her point, people do drive too fast.
Oh, yes, right.
Oh, yes.
And if I had court receipts, that might reflect some of the results of them driving too fast. Because we do try to stay on top of it as best we can, but her street's not the only one that they're driving too fast on, or
Damon
running
Road is
stop
a
signs
free-for-all.
or something like that.
Yeah.
And we've had this problem, just like every other community. It seems like since COVID has hit us, there appear to be more speeders. Practically get run over running 80 miles an hour on the interstate. So, I guess just more police enforcement. We do have a radar sign that we put up that reminds people of the speed on various streets and that sort of thing. So that's it for my report.
My complaint on the speed there used to be that they only slow down, never stop at the stop sign. Now, they don't even slow down at all.
Okay. All right, moving on. Recreation Cable Television, Natasha Metz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We had a meeting today at 2:30 to discuss where we were at as far as recreation for the rest of the year, and while we have canceled Harvest Fest and any other in-person events, we are following along with any changes that the state has. So as guidelines are given and restrictions lifted, we're kind of working with that. So we have a few things in the works. Nothing is solid, so I can't really give you any specifics that are going on, but we're working to still maybe have a little bit of light up Greenhills, maybe do a little smaller events throughout here as the restrictions allow, so keep an eye out for those. I also wanted to announce our Plant a Garden competition winners. There were 2 winners out of our groups. Thank you everybody that participated. Each winner will receive $100 in gift certificates from local restaurants each. So our 2 winners are Heidi Cheek of Farragut Road for Well Done Landscape Gardens, and Lee Ann Cartier
I'm not sure how to specifically say that, so I apologize if I messed that up, of Bayham Drive for her beautiful container garden. And then finally, as Maria brought up, I am going to make a motion to recognize Halloween and allow trick-or-treating for this year.
Okay.
Second.
Thank you.
Oh, can we do it now? Can we do it under reports?
You can,
Yeah, okay.
sure.
All right. Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay.
To vote.
All right, well, let's do the motion when we
Oh, okay.
get into
New business.
legislation.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Okay, Intergovernmental Affairs, Laws and Rules, Maria Walther.
We were supposed to have the meeting today, but there were no items for the agenda. I'm proposing to have the meeting on the 27th of October, which would be the next council meeting, and that would be at 6 o'clock, and is followed by the Safety Committee, which would be at 5:30.
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay.
Okay. All right, Service and Streets, Jennifer Osmanaglo.
Thank you. We did have a committee meeting for the streets and services on September 8th, and one of the main things we did discuss was the garbage issue. So it's not gone unnoticed that there's an excessive amount of garbage. So we have been addressing the issue, and we specifically talked about landlords as well. So it is something that we are addressing.
Yeah, I want to be part of the dialogue,
Okay.
so that it's not going anywhere.
Okay.
You can feel free to send me an email, and we can bring it up in our next
Okay, I have
meeting.
photographs to show you.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Okay. All right, Community Development, Jeff Halter.
Yes, we met today at 2 o'clock. A couple things that were discussed, several things actually. We were looking at possibly having a National Historic Landmark street banners. The number of poles that we have for signage has changed because of the new lighting at the shopping center. We still can do pole street banners, but we're going to hold, we've finished the road out front. We're going to wait for a better financial environment to go ahead and invest in that signage. But the thought was we definitely need to do more to promote our National Historic Landmark status. The electronic sign is also an avenue that we could do that for no cost. We're looking at reviewing a new resident packet. Other things that were considered was a policy for the signage for the electronic sign out front. Just some guidelines. I reached out to Springfield Township, and they had some thoughts and expressed those to us, and we're trying to put together a policy to guide us on how businesses, right now they're running for free. There'll be just a nominal charge once we finally move to a pay rental scenario. But we also thought that it would be a good place to promote the one call. So any of you, we bring it up on a regular basis, but the one call, you can call the village office up here and get on the one call service, and that will allow you to get alerts. We're very respectful. We don't just bombard you with information. We try to make it very relevant for the one call. And I don't know if we have like 500 or 600 on that. About 600 people are on that. So if you want to know more information, that's a good method, as well as the Greenhills Journal and meetings like this. Let's see, we also have Yvonne put together a marketing piece for the village that we're reviewing and refining, talking about quiet place to live, safe community, walkable, a green community with the parks and green in multiple ways, central location, and so we want to continue to work, to get the word out on. We have a tremendous bone structure here to build upon. I know that we've been through a lot with all the changes with COVID, but also just economically, the different winds that have blown our way. But we realize we have a very, very special community, and we want to maximize that as much as we can. That concludes my report.
Okay. All right, moving on, safety, Melanie Hermes.
We did not meet today. There was nothing on our agenda. We will be meeting on 10/27 at 5:30. I do want to recommend that we do talk about, I want to say speed limit, but that's obviously not what I mean, just the traffic around that area, if there's any ideas for the Farragut. I know what she was talking about turning left from Hadley onto Farragut, I've often noticed that until you're 3/4 of the way into your turn, it is hard to see past the cars, so I didn't know if we could come up with some suggestions or maybe just kind of brainstorm some ways to address that. I know with the new school going in, that is actually more students than what we currently have, so there will be more walkers, more bus riders, and so that might be something that we should talk about sooner rather than later.
Can I add one thing to that, if you don't mind? I live right by there, and I think that also it's important to note, a lot of people go east on Farragut and take a right on Hadley. Many, many people do. And I've seen multiple times where a car sitting at that intersection at Hadley assumes the car is going to turn. We've had several accidents. It's hard to fight in a community like this when things become so habitual, but be very, very careful around that intersection. And one other thing too is I know that the corner property there has quite a bit of growth around a tree and stuff. You can't really, I don't think, demand that they trim it back, but it's not helping the situation. So it's definitely a concern, along with the speed. But thank you.
How much of the construction crew is parking at that particular corner?
A lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
So,
Yeah, that is definitely adding to it.
yeah.
And then another, just a reminder that as the superintendent has said, schools will be going back starting next Tuesday. The children will start going back to school. We do have school zones. I think a lot of people during this whole COVID-19 time have forgotten that we have school zones. So just a reminder to reduce your speed Monday through Friday during school hours. Just because you can't see the children in school doesn't mean that they aren't. And the teachers are there as well. So might be nice to get back into the habit of reducing to the lower speed for the school zones. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Finance and Audit, Jack Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's a summary recap for the general fund activity that's been prepared by the finance director for the month of August at your desk this evening. Many communities throughout the United States have experienced probably their most difficult financial year in 2020. And while COVID-19 Rita's warning to us at the onset of the virus, and the results that we saw for the months of May and June certainly gave the village real concern. The village continues to benefit, we assume primarily due to the construction within the village. I'd like to point out 3 items on the revenues side of the recap that you have in front of you. First is the extraordinary income tax receipts for the month of August relative to the norm, which have really erased the substantial deficits we saw for May and June. Year-to-year income taxes last month, in the month of July, we're still lagging nearly 16%, but as you can see now, it's just under a negative 3% off for 2020 versus 2019. Real estate receipts at the end of August did not represent the second half settlement, which was received from the county on September 16th as noted. The receipts now meet the expected amounts budgeted for 2020. When the settlement is taken into account, the overall year-to-date revenues are only off 4.1% for 2020 versus 2019. Of course, you can't represent that because it happened after the end of the month. The current general fund balance for the end of August.
Sorry.
is $1,387,939, which is $75,372.76 more than the same point in 2019. That number was a negative 112,000 just last month. So there's been real improvement in that area. Transfers from the general fund to other funds are expected at the budgeted amounts. Staff has maintained a close-to-the-cuff approach to all expenditures, which have served us well and need to be complimented and thanked for their efforts. Unless you have any questions, that's the end of my report.
Any comments? And I might add, because we have more money in the general fund, is because we delayed spending money on some capital items, like a truck, and we were buying a police car and some of those things that we didn't.
Holding right now.
So, and we'll still hold on those items until we see if this continues.
Yes, sir.
All right, moving on. Unfinished business, none. New business, Resolution 2020-20-F, resolution making supplemental appropriations and transfers. Mr. Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Resolution 2020-20F, resolution making supplemental appropriations and transfer. Whereas the 2020 annual appropriations were adopted on December 10th, 2019, are to be amended, and whereas appropriations must not exceed the total available resources of the village of per the Ohio Revised Code Section 5705.36A5, therefore an amended certificate of estimated resources has been requested from the County Budget Commission. Now therefore be it resolved by the Council of the Village, Greenhills, Ohio, Section 1, since certain actions are needed in the monies appropriated so to permit the Village of Greenhills to meet its financial obligations for the year 2020, the following items of expenditures are to supplement the appropriations for the expenditures for the year 2020. Fund description, General Fund, 1,000.41, appropriation, 38,000, change, 22,000, for a total of $60,000. Section 2, that this following transfers of funds be made from previously appropriated monies, none. Section 3, this resolution shall take effect and be in full force from and after the earliest date allowed by law. Mr. Mayor, I move for the acceptance of this resolution.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comments?
If you wanted, this particular additional amount to this fund is for contracted services, specifically the inspection service.
Correct. I'll just add that really with the school project going on, we have big permits coming through that it's difficult to estimate what they're going to be, and that's been taking it up. So.
All right.
But we also get the revenue to offset it, so.
I think we need a second.
Yeah, you've got the second.
Okay.
Clerk call the roll, or clerk, yeah.
Hermes,
Aye.
Metz,
Aye.
Walter,
Aye.
Osmanova,
Aye.
Walter,
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Okay, resolution number 2020-20-F passes. Next resolution, 2020-21-F, resolution making supplemental appropriations and transfers for coronavirus. Mr. Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Resolution 2020-21F, resolution making supplemental appropriations and transfers. Whereas in 2020 annual appropriations that were adopted on December 10th, 2019 are to be amended, and whereas appropriations must not exceed the total available resources of the village per Ohio Revised Code Section 5705.36A5. Therefore, an amended certificate of estimated resources has been requested from the County Budget Commission. Now, therefore, be resolved by the Council of Village, Greenhills, Ohio, Section 1, that certain actions are needed in monies appropriated so to permit the Village of Greenhills to meet its financial obligations for the year 2020, and the following items of expenditures are to supplement the appropriations for expenditure for the year 2020. Fund description: Coronavirus Relief Fund account number 2151. Original appropriation, 0. Change, $80,304.39 for a total of $80,304.39. Section 2, that the following transfers of funds to be made from previously appropriated monies. From none. And Section 3, that this resolution shall take effect and be in full force from and after the earliest date allowed by law. Mr. Mayor, I move for the adoption of this resolution.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any comments, questions?
You'll remember that we had a resolution setting up this account previously, and that this money was money received from the state through the CARE Act, and that if it's unused, it goes back to where it came from, so.
Anything to add? Okay.
Deb, you want to add anything? No, I mean, that's correct what Jack was saying. We did receive two payments, one in August for around $53,000, and then the other in September for $26,000, which totaled about $80,000. So that was the village's portion that came to us from Hamilton County. The Ohio General Assembly established that process for municipalities to receive X amount of dollars based on each their local government fund formula. And so ours in turn ended up to be about $80,000. So we did receive the revenue stream. And so now we're doing the appropriation for the expenses for the exact same amount of money. The new fund has been set up, and so we are now permitted by law to spend that on COVID-related expenses, and and we do have a certain period of time that we have to spend that, and if we don't spend it by the end of the year, it does have to go back to the state treasury.
All right, clerk, call the roll.
Osmanaghu?
Aye.
Walter?
Aye.
Halter?
Aye.
Lee?
Aye.
Met?
Aye.
Herman?
Aye.
Okay, resolution number 2020-21-F passes. Next resolution, 2020-22-F, resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor. Mr. Lee.
On a roll tonight. The resolution 2020-22F, resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them for the county auditor. Whereas the Village of Greenhills, in accordance with the provisions of law, has previously adopted a tax budget for the next succeeding fiscal year commencing January 2021. Whereas the Budget Commission of the Hamilton County, Ohio, has certified its action therein to this council, together with an estimate by the county auditor of the rate of each tax necessary to be levied by this council, and what part thereof is without, and what part within the 10 mil tax limitations. Now therefore be it resolved by the Council of Village of Greenhills, Ohio, Section 1, that the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission in its certification be and the same are hereby accepted. Section 2, that there be and is hereby levied on the tax duplicate of said village the rate of each tax necessary to be levied within and without the 10 mil limitations as contained in Exhibit A attached hereto. and made a part of this resolution. Section 3, that this resolution shall be in full force and take effect from and after its passage. Mr. Mayor, I recommend the adoption of this resolution.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt Resolution 2020-22-F. Any comments or questions?
These are all the existing levies, and there's really no change, so.
And I might add that we do have a recreation levy up for renewal this year, and that generates, according to the county, $35,555. And so we're hopeful that that gets approved in November's election for renewal, no increase in what taxes people have been paying. All right, clerk call the roll.
Walter?
Aye.
Osmanagud?
Aye.
Halter?
Aye.
Lee?
Aye.
Hermes?
Aye.
Smith?
Aye.
Okay, resolution number 2020-22-F passes. All right. Next one, resolution number 2020-23-LNR, resolution authorizing the municipal manager to enter into a private roadway easement and maintenance agreement related to Spoils Lane. Ms. Walter.
Resolution number 2020-23-LNR. Resolution authorizing the municipal manager to enter into a private roadway easement and maintenance agreement related to Spoils Lane. Whereas the Village of Greenhills, Ohio owns property commonly referred to as Spoils Lane, used as a private roadway, and whereas an adjacent property owner has requested certain easement right over a portion of said property, and whereas the property owner and the municipal manager have negotiated the terms of an easement and maintenance agreement for the use of said property. Now therefore be it resolved by the Council of the Village of Greenhills, Hamilton County, Ohio, members thereto concurring that Section 1, the municipal manager is hereby authorized to execute a private roadway and maintenance agreement substantially in the form of the agreement attached hereto and as Exhibit A and incorporated herein by reference. Section 2, the municipal manager is further authorized to execute any and all other necessary and related documents to effectuate the easement being granted. And Section 3, that the resolution shall be effective immediately upon its adoption. Mr. Mayor, I would like this resolution to be adopted.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and second. Resolution number 2020-23-LNR. Any comments?
Ms. Coburn?
Well, I think we redid this a couple of times, and provided you with the class and some general description about the easement, so this will be the
And there's a new owner of the property, and that building's been there probably 60-plus years. And whenever we own the road, and they always had access to the road, but no formal easement. And so whenever we did repairs on the road, we used to have to beg them to help contribute, which didn't always happen. And with this resolution, they will be assisting in helping to maintain that road. Okay, clerk call the roll.
Osmanagud?
Aye.
Walter?
Aye.
Halter?
Aye.
Lee?
Aye.
Smith?
Aye.
Hermes?
Aye.
Okay, resolution number 2020-23-LNR passes. Okay, last resolution. Resolution number 2020-24R, authorizing the municipal manager to enter into a swimming pool management and maintenance agreement with Swim Safe Pools Management, Inc. Ms. Metz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Resolution number 2020-24-R, authorizing the municipal manager to enter into a swimming pool management and maintenance agreement with Swim Safe Pool Management Incorporated. Whereas the Village of Greenhills owns and operates a community pool and related amenities, and whereas Swim Safe Pool Management Incorporated is in the business of managing, operating, and servicing community swimming pools and pool areas and has been successfully operating the community pool for the past 9 years, and whereas council has determined that continuing the use of a professional pool management company is prudent to assist in the protection of the public peace, health, safety, and welfare. Now therefore be it resolved by the Council of the Village of Greenhills, Ohio, members elected thereto concurring. Section 1, that the municipal manager is hereby authorized to enter into a swimming pool management and maintenance agreement with Swim Safe Pool Management Incorporated, substantially in the form of the agreement attached as Exhibit A. Section 2, that this resolution shall be and is effective from and after the earliest period allowed by law. Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt this resolution.
I second it.
It's been moved and seconded for Resolution 2020-24R. Any comments?
It's a good deal.
I'll say that Swim Safe has done a good job for us. I don't know how many pools they manage in the area, but they manage a lot of pools. And of course, with COVID, we were one of the first pools to open. We were the first. And the system that we developed here was adopted by Swim Safe and used in a lot of other community pools there. So the plan that Yvonne came up with has worked well for the surrounding area. All right, clerk call the roll.
Lee,
Aye.
Hermes,
Aye.
Metz,
Aye.
Walter,
Aye.
Mahmood. Aye. Halter.
Aye.
Okay, resolution number 2020-24-R passes. Okay.
Hear the motion from,
Yeah, can I not make my motion? I would like to make a motion to recognize Halloween and allow trick-or-treating this year.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
aye.
Okay, we're going to have Halloween. And be sure to check the guidelines. I think the manager is going to put it on our website, what the state guidelines are. But it's also on the County Board of Health and the State Board of Health for guidelines.
Just as a matter of information, we have been putting a bowl of candy on a table at the end of the driveway for years. It works very, very well. The kids adapt to it rather quickly.
Well, the problem is the state guidelines does not recommend that anymore.
Well,
Yeah.
try.
One of the suggestions was to get a PVC pipe, put the candy in and slide it down.
As long as you don't blow into it to drive it.
Right, you don't blow.
Now, why did you have to mention that one? You do know my husband is now going to come up with some sort of contraption to be able to give them the candy without touching it.
It's not like I don't blow them down with your mask on.
Yes. If you want to see what he comes up with, come by our house, because now he's going to.
Okay, we want to do the municipal calendar.
October the 27th, laws and rules.
Okay,
Community development on December 8th.
And
Safety, October 27th at 5:30.
okay.
Recreation, also on December 8th.
Oh, okay. All right. Nothing else? Meeting adjourned.